Hey guys, it's Samo here again, and you know, I'm gonna continue with my presentation of some of the most important records that influenced me, and I think probably records that are influential general in the history of jazz and maybe even overlooked. And today's record I already mentioned in the previous video when talking about Alto Lunch is Point of Departure by Andrew Hill, who per se is already one of the most underrated jazz pianists and composers. And Point of Departure, if you don't know it, one of the most legendary records that came out in the mid 60s for the label Blue Note, and it features like really an all-star band. And I'll start just with the rhythm section. Basically the same rhythm section as for Auto Lunch, the amazing Richard Davis on double bass and Tony Williams again on drums, and these two just, together with Andrew on piano, they just like the propulsive force of this record. It's just incredible what they do underneath all the three horns. And the horn section, of course, terrific. Kenny Dorham on trumpet, one of the best bebop players ever. Although on this one, he sounds a little bit different, definitely influenced by Andrew's compositions. And then you have, of course, two saxophone players. One guy also alternating on bass clarinet and flute, actually both on flute. And first, we have Joe Henderson, who I think he was 27 years old on this record. And it's one of those out records that Joe did, and it's really fun to hear him play in this context next to Blackfire, also by Andrew. I think Blackfire was 1 year before in 1963. And then on the other horn, alto saxophone, of course, and bass clarinet on three tunes, the great Eric Dolphy. And it's one of those rare appearances by Eric as a sideman. And it's just, it's monstrous playing on alto saxophone and bass clarinet. And it's really one of those things that stands out on this record and makes it really incredible. I mean, Eric's playing always when you get a chance to hear him, it's just like, man, crazy stuff. And one important aspect of this album for me, but I think also of many other musicians of my generation and older and younger, actually, it's like the compositions. And Andrew Hill was one of the best composers, of his generation, or after all, one of the best composers in jazz. And all the tunes, starting with with Refuge and then New Monastery, Spectrum, Flight 19, all these tunes reflect this angular character of the music, which is fairly open. And I think so many artists were influenced by Andrew. And I got a chance to talk with many guys, and play with many guys who played with Andrew, especially the rhythm section that he had, in the early 2000s, John Aber on bass and Eric McPherson on drums. And they say just Andrew was amazing, always constantly creative as a composer, bringing new music, and he was keeping up all the time. You can even see that in his latest record, Dusk. I think it was 2006. And Andrew, one of those guys who deserve way more recognition than he actually got in his life and even now. So I mean, among musicians, of course, he's highly respected. And anyway, guys, let me know what you think about Point of Departure. I think one of the most underrated records of all time in the history of jazz. And if you like this record, what do you like about it? And talk soon again. Ciao.